and we're celebrating Human Rights Month, 30 years of democracy. Do you think we've come far enough to protect the rights of particularly the vulnerable?
I would say we have not come far enough. I like your question because it suggests we've come far. I was speaking to judges and lawyers in an international family law conference, specifically focusing on GBV. And my response is we have come a long way, but not far enough. And it's time to reflect on what has gone wrong. We've signed all of the human rights instruments, from CEDAW to SADC instruments. We've led the drafting of some of the instruments, like the SADC addendum on gender-based violence and violence against women. We have some of the best laws in the world, but clearly there's something we are not doing right, because there doesn't seem to be sufficient correlation between the money we've put into it, the policies we've put into it, and the outcomes. So I suggest that we need to rethink our strategies and our tactics. And some of it for me has to do with embracing Ubuntu and restorative justice. Because you, as a journalist, would know, for example, that in the normal criminal justice system, somebody who's raped their child, recently a newspaper reported about a 11-month-old rape. The father goes to jail, 2 life sentences. He will be raped in jail because rapists get raped. He will come back, most likely to be a serial killer against women. So the question is, are there better ways of prevention, and are there better ways of rehabilitation?
Gender equality, particularly women, we've seen at this conference now, mostly still men leading the pack. Are we doing enough to allow and give women also the opportunity to lead? We don't even have a lot of women leading political parties. What is your view on that?
Well, we need to change the paradigms in our heads, because we did have a couple of women. The political parties are led by men, but in terms of how we put panels together, we don't have to invite heads of political parties. We can make sure we have a mix. My panel was all women, which was wonderful. So I'm grateful to Daily Maverick for trying. I think they probably thought they were constrained by the fact that they had to invite leaders of organizations, and therefore they had to work with what they have. But I think going forward, they could mix, like invite women who are not necessarily number one in their political parties, but number two as well.
What is your message to South Africans this Human Rights Month?
My message to you as a fellow South African is we've come a long way in advancing human rights. Today is really better than yesterday, in that we cannot be discriminated against on the basis of race, gender, disability, sexual orientation, nationality without consequences, because the law says you cannot be discriminated. But when it comes to de facto equality, people actually enjoying human rights, particularly in the little spaces that Eleanor Roosevelt said that's where people should enjoy human rights: our homes, our factories, public spaces where girls walk like the post office. We are lagging behind. So there's still a gap between the promise and reality. My challenge to you as a fellow South African is celebrate what we've achieved, but be the game changer, because who violates human rights? It's us. So I disagree, for example, with those that suggest that the best way is to create employment is for poor people to share employment, because that exacerbates poverty. Let's all give up something in order to make sure that no one is left behind. But if we give up something, we'll gain something, because economists such as David Stiglitz say that when we lift everyone, deliberately and consciously, we create social capital. And that social capital is going to make sure that everyone has an interest in ending crime. Our infrastructure has been stolen in broad daylight with people just watching. But I was speaking to Mark Barnes, the guy who used to run the post office. He's building toilets. It's not his job. He's a civil society person. He's building toilets. And why? Right to human dignity. But what Mark said to me was interesting about when the mafia or the local mafia tries to want to hijack the project, who pushes back against the mafia? The women in the community, because they can see what he's doing as theirs. So I think as South Africans, let's all up our game in terms of protecting human rights. A lot of people already are doing something to move the needle on social justice, but let's just do more. For example, these students that are sent back from university, when they had that golden ticket, my fear is that when somebody says, let's go burn something, because something is burning inside them, they might just be the first in line to burn something because they don't feel like society has had compassion for them, and therefore why should they have compassion for? That's not me gaslighting young people to say to burn something, because if you haven't had an opportunity at university this year, you will still have an opportunity tomorrow. But when we burn things, then we have to fix those things. So it's not my advice to people to destroy anything just because our human rights are not where they need to be yet. Lastly, to advance human rights, to strengthen human rights, vote for yourself. Don't vote for the most eloquent person. Vote for your dreams and vote for the party that carries your dreams. Vote for the independent person that carries your dream. But secondly, vote for a party and person that will advance social justice, because as long as there's injustice somewhere, there can't be sustainable peace anywhere.
Sure.